A single announcement, delivered in under 60 seconds, rewrote the unspoken rules of a centuries-old institution. Before a packed chamber inside Windsor Castle, Prince William took the podium. He chose his words with absolute precision, revealing that his daughter, Princess Charlotte, had been named the crown's very first royal youth ambassador. This was not merely a ceremonial title, it was a structural shift. The newly established position placed the young princess alongside her father at select public, educational, and charitable engagements. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. When the prince finished speaking, no one applauded. The silence inside the room was heavy, carrying the weight of immediate realization. Behind closed doors, the senior figures of the monarchy processed a decision that altered the public trajectory of the next generation. William allowed the quiet to hover over the long conference table. Beside him, Catherine watched her daughter with a mixture of quiet pride and deep-seated apprehension. King Charles lowered his gaze to the leather-bound briefing folder before him. Queen Camilla sat entirely motionless. The prince clarified the operational terms of the appointment. The role was strictly supervised, focused entirely on youth welfare, educational initiatives, and community engagement. It carried no constitutional power and altered nothing regarding the legal line of succession. Yet, it provided a young royal with a structured platform unprecedented in modern history. Charlotte felt every gaze in the room lock onto her. Though she had expressed a desire to support charitable causes, the sudden reality of official duty felt heavy. Reaching beneath the polished table, Catherine squeezed her daughter's hand. Having spent years navigating the intense public eye, the mother understood how easily public service could consume personal life. She was determined to ensure that official duties would not erode the childhood her daughter deserved. King Charles closed the folder with a sharp snap. He turned to his son and asked whether the young princess truly grasped the immense pressure being placed upon her shoulders. William did not back down. He explained that Charlotte herself had requested to take on the responsibility after learning how frequently young people felt overlooked. A documented private recording had preserved her sentiment. She wished to stand alongside her peers, not above them. The king looked toward his granddaughter, his concern visible. Then, William revealed a detail that visibly shifted the room's dynamic. Charlotte's debut appearance would take place at the National Children's Service Ceremony, an event honoring young volunteers across the nation. Queen Camilla raised a pointed question, asking why her own household had not been invited to review the arrangements beforehand. William replied directly. He and Catherine had processed and approved the initiative through their own philanthropic arm, the Royal Foundation. The statement established a firm boundary around the upbringing and public exposure of his children. The future king was actively directing the trajectory of his household. As the meeting concluded and courtiers gathered their documents, Charlotte paused near the doorway. She noticed her grandfather lingering alone at the table, his hand still resting on the closed dossier. The stillness surrounding him was not born of anger, but of a profound awareness of what public life demands from those born into it. To the broader public, Charlotte represented a dynamic vision of royal continuity. To William, however, she remained the young daughter whose safety he guarded fiercely. That duality created an agonizing internal conflict. Part of him recognized her potential to advocate genuinely for young people, while another part remembered the intense scrutiny that had defined his own youth. For years, William and Catherine had maintained a strict barrier around their family life. Charlotte attended school, followed daily routines, and returned home without the demands placed on full-time working royals. The new designation threatened that carefully constructed isolation. Even a limited schedule of official duties carried the risk of creating expectations that could prove difficult to manage over time. William carried memories that few could fully comprehend. Cameras had documented his upbringing, his grief, and his personal development long before he had learned to navigate relentless public interest. While Catherine had integrated into the royal framework as an adult, William had experienced its full weight as a child. Though their backgrounds differed, their core objective was identical: to ensure their daughter did not suffer in silence while attempting to fulfill public expectations. Later, away from advisors and staff, William sat down with Charlotte. He asked her directly if she felt intimidated by the prospect of public engagements. Charlotte looked down briefly before acknowledging her hesitation. Then, looking up, she noted that fear should not prevent someone from helping children who feel unheard. William recognized the courage in her answer, but he also recognized the innocence behind it, a vulnerability he felt bound to protect. Catherine joined them, assuring her daughter that official responsibilities would never take precedence over her education, her privacy, or her personal well-being. Charlotte held her mother tightly, revealing both her enthusiasm and her lingering anxiety. She felt proud of the trust placed in her, yet aware that a successful debut could lead to increasing demands from the institution. That concern deepened during a private discussion between King Charles and William. The king remarked that Charlotte's natural composure was reminiscent of the late Queen Elizabeth II, whose unwavering sense of obligation had sustained the monarchy for decades. Intended as high praise, the comparison troubled William. While Queen Elizabeth had earned global respect, her role had required an extraordinary sacrifice of private life, a path William was determined to prevent for his daughter. Shortly after, William examined a confidential planning document that outlined potential future engagements. The internal framework suggested a gradual expansion of Charlotte's schedule, detailing prospective visits to youth centers and community organizations. What had begun as an idea for a single appearance was evolving into a long-term trajectory. When King Charles referenced the specific event that had inspired the initiative, William's expression hardened. It was an unscripted moment during a previous public gathering, an incident where a young child in the crowd had become separated from his family, that had set everything in motion. The decision to create the role had not originated in a strategy meeting or an administrative memo. It was forged during a brief, unscripted moment at a large public event months earlier. Charlotte had arrived alongside her parents at the youth service ceremony, expecting a routine, low-profile appearance. The event brought together students, educators, and community volunteers. Her parents considered it a safe, controlled environment for her to observe public life while remaining close to them. As guests moved through the hall, a young boy drifted away from his group. Realizing he was alone, he froze in panic and called out, but his voice was lost in the ambient noise. While several nearby officials hesitated, uncertain of how to handle the protocol, Charlotte noticed the child's distress immediately. Before security personnel could step in, Charlotte walked over to the boy. She spoke to him quietly, asked for his name, and reassured him that he was safe. Keeping her voice calm, she asked where he had last seen his teacher. Within moments, an aide located the chaperone and reunited them. The brief interaction transformed the mood in the room. Watching from a short distance, Catherine felt a wave of intense pride, followed quickly by concern. Her daughter had acted out of pure empathy, but the mother knew how rapidly an institution could turn a natural impulse into a permanent expectation. William felt the same tension. In a recorded conversation following the event, he acknowledged the grace of his daughter's actions, but reflected on how quickly duty can claim a child's life before they fully understand its consequences. Determined to maintain control over the situation, William commissioned a formal assessment. The review examined whether limited, structured engagements could be undertaken safely without compromising Charlotte's education or personal freedom. That assessment laid the groundwork for the Royal Youth Ambassador role. Charlotte's own perspective gave the proposal its moral weight. A note recorded by the event coordinator captured her asking a simple question: who listens to young people when the adults are occupied? When King Charles reviewed the comprehensive proposal, he realized it went far beyond a single appearance. Recognizing the long-term implications, he requested an immediate meeting with his son. The discussion took place behind closed doors at Windsor Castle. Without aides present, father and son confronted differing views on the balance between tradition and modern family life. King Charles expressed deep concern that Charlotte was being introduced to official duties too early. William argued that hiding her completely would teach her to view public service with anxiety rather than purpose. The conversation shifted from constitutional policy to deeply personal territory when the king referenced the intense media scrutiny that had marked William's own childhood. Charles had reviewed the proposed schedule expecting a simple, isolated appearance. Instead, he found an outlined framework of structured engagements. Establishing an official title meant creating a public identity tied directly to the monarchy. If the public embraced Charlotte in the role, stepping back later might be interpreted as a setback or an internal conflict. William remained resolute. He argued that young people would relate to someone closer to their own age, emphasizing that Charlotte's participation would remain strictly limited and secondary to her schooling. The king cautioned that public affection often turns into public expectation, a force that family boundaries can struggle to contain. He stated firmly that he did not want to see another royal child subjected to relentless public scrutiny. William responded clearly, stating that she was his daughter before she was a public figure. The statement underscored a fundamental disagreement over paternal authority and institutional tradition. Charles reminded his son that noble intentions had not spared William or Harry from intense childhood exposure. The reference brought to light memories of past grief played out in front of global audiences, an experience that had profoundly shaped both princes. To clarify the intent behind the proposal, William produced a handwritten note from Charlotte. In it, the young princess expressed a sincere wish to support other children, while explicitly requesting a clause that would allow her to step down if the role ever interfered with her studies or happiness. Charles read the letter carefully. His initial stance softened upon reading his granddaughter's words, specifically her observation that serving others should never require losing oneself. While acknowledging her maturity, the king inquired who had designed the legal safeguards and who would manage the public impact of her engagements. William met his father's gaze and provided his answer. While the palace debated protocol and media coverage, Catherine focused on protecting her daughter's well-being. She drafted an uncompromising set of parameters designed to safeguard Charlotte's personal life. Catherine had analyzed the potential risks long before the formal discussions took place. She collaborated with William to establish a clear framework: no unescorted engagements, no involvement in political issues, strict protection of school schedules, and a minimal number of appearances each year. To maintain absolute authority over the initiative, William placed the program under the direct management of the Royal Foundation. This structural decision ensured that Charlotte's schedule and public commitments remained under her. Subscribe.